The following program does not offer personal medical advice. Please consult your doctor before using any treatment or product we cover. Welcome to Go to Health Media with your host, Jonathan Marks. We provide a welcoming environment where experts educate you on important health topics, answer your questions, and provide information from which you can benefit in consultation with your doctor. You can visit and subscribe to the show at gotohealthmedia.com. And now, here is Jonathan Marks. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Jonathan Marks with Go to Health. We have another great show for you today. This is about children's sports and injuries. While playing sports can be important for both physical and mental health, injuries are bound to happen, landing millions of young athletes in the ER each year. I know I was there myself. Contact and collision sports like football, basketball, hockey, soccer can often cause injuries, and so can other sports like baseball, gymnastics, and bicycling. Experts say establishing a healthy training routine is the key to preventing most injuries. This includes stretching and cooling down, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep. Experts also say it's important to avoid comparison, as every child is different in terms of growth, muscle strength, and bone density. Here to talk with us today is Naomi Brown, MD. She's a pediatric sports medicine specialist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, that's known as CHOP. She's focusing on sports injury prevention, overuse injuries, and pain management. Her areas of expertise are dance medicine, hypermobility, injury prevention, pediatric injuries, pediatric sports medicine, repetitive strain injuries, skiing and snowboarding injuries, and sports injuries. How are you today, doctor?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. So how common are injuries in young athletes?
So unfortunately, they are common. We see about 2.6 million children each year presenting to the emergency department, but the stats show that there are over 3.5 million children each year who are getting injured due to sports or recreational activities.
Wow. And what are the most common types of injuries you see?
So the most common would still be your sprains and strains, like your ankle sprains. Fractures, unfortunately, we see a lot of, especially in children in the upper extremity, less so the lower extremity. Followed by overuse injuries. Sports specialization can cause overuse and stress fractures. And then also we see a lot of concussions.
A lot of concussions. Yes, I know we've heard about that and the importance of protecting against that. When it comes to sports injuries, what's the best option for treatment? Is it ER, urgent care, the pediatrician's office? Where do we go?
It really depends on the type of injury, to be honest. If you have someone who is a pretty severe injury, can't bear weight, definitely recommend getting evaluated urgently, whether or not it's in the emergency room or urgent care. Emergency room, we really want to make sure we're using that if there's a bad fracture, if there's a significant laceration, obviously a head injury that you're worried about that might need advanced imaging like a CAT scan, if that child is vomiting or having a change in mental status. But otherwise, really using your pediatrician's office for fielding questions like this. They're usually available, especially during the day, but also after hours. They have people who can help with determining whether or not they can be brought in the next day, waiting overnight, giving some advice over the phone, or going to the urgent care.
Got it. And do people come directly to you or do they have to get referred?
No, unfortunately, in today's state of insurance, some people do need referrals, but a lot of times you can come directly to us. If you have a pediatric sports medicine physician local in your community, oftentimes they have urgent visits that you can go to. We try to reserve urgent appointments for about 48 hours out so you can get in quickly and avoid having to go to the emergency room or urgent care.
Got it. Okay. And tell me, what is dance medicine?
Dance medicine specializes in performance medicine in terms of dance. It can include and extend out to the more performance artists like music theater or figure skating can be kind of roped into that a little bit. But we think sometimes about dance not being a sport. It is 100% a sport. And we really want to work on those athletes in a different way, thinking about the types of movement that they're doing and the injury patterns that they can get.
Got it. And when we talk about hypermobility, are there certain other common conditions that go along with hypermobility?
So a lot of athletes can have too much motion in their joints that can put them at risk of having injuries such as ankle sprains or overuse. There are some diagnoses out there that are more serious, that are connective tissue disorders that sometimes need to be screened for. We tend to see people who are more hypermobile go into the sports that allow them to move their body more, like gymnastics or
Yes.
dance.
Yes.
And those athletes can have different types of injury patterns that we really need to recognize. How do we strengthen the joints and not work on just flexibility of the muscles?
Got it. So I'm familiar with ehlers danos, and I know that can be subject to overuse or overstrain. Are there other conditions that can be associated with that?
Yeah, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is the most common one that you'll hear of a connective tissue disorder or hypermobility syndrome. But there are a spectrum of hypermobility syndromes that aren't necessarily meeting the criteria for EDS or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but they're a hypermobile spectrum disorder. We don't know all the genes that are involved in making people more flexible. We tend to think that it is more familial. There are some more serious connective tissue disorders like Marfan's or Loeys-Dietz as well.
Okay. And in terms of preventing injuries, I mentioned before stretching and cooling down. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so it depends on the types of stretches as well. And you mentioned cooling down, which is very important to your body, and doing your static stretches at the end of exercise. But before you exercise, you want to make sure you warm your body up, especially as the weather is getting cooler. We need to make sure that we get those muscles warm before we play, or you're more at risk for injury. Doing dynamic stretches before you exercise. Those are the exercises where you think about moving through motion. So your knee highs, your butt kicks, your inchworms,
Hmm.
things that are getting the muscles with the blood flowing, but also stretching them a little bit in a healthy way.
Got it. And then tell us the importance of staying hydrated.
Well, we definitely need to stay hydrated. You need good blood flow to all of the muscles, but also making sure, especially during the hot weather, or if you're in an area of the country that is hotter than it is right now in Philadelphia, it's beautiful fall weather here, is making sure that we are not getting any injuries related to the temperature. So kids especially are at risk of getting heat illness and heat exhaustion. So staying hydrated is incredibly important for that.
Got it. So do you see injuries? Is there a particular age in which you see serious injuries? Is it young kids? Is it in the older kids when they get into high school sports? Or how about the younger kids? Do they get injuries as well?
Yeah, the younger kids tend to get more fractures, from falling, and then the older kids tend to get more ligament injuries. So it really depends on your skeletal maturity. There are different body parts that are more susceptible to injury depending on your age. So if you think about an adult, if they hurt their knee, more likely they're going to maybe strain their tendon of their patellar tendon, but kids can actually pull that tendon off the bone and get an avulsion fracture or a bone injury.
Wow. Is that repairable?
Absolutely. But yeah, you make sure you get it recognized appropriately and treated appropriately. Some of these, unfortunately, will need surgery, not as often, but some of these injuries will need to be treated differently. We always like to say kids are not little adults.
Got it. So I have a question. I have raised four children. So how protective am I of the child at what age and when, how protective should I be at the younger ages and when do I let up in terms of having the kid understand their own risks and be doing the right things?
Yeah, we really need to make sure that we're teaching our kids to recognize what their body feels like. And
Mm.
so we used to have this old saying, no pain, no gain, which is not a great saying, especially to ignore pain. Pain is your body's way of telling you something. So we have to teach our children the difference between soreness and pain. We don't want kids to come out and say, oh, my ankle hurts, and it's because they're using muscles they've never used before. So teaching a child, are you performing? Are you able to do the proper form and function when you're out there? Or is it affecting how you're walking? So for example, there's a common overuse injury called Sever's apophysitis, which is an inflammation of the growth plate at the heel. The calcaneus is your heel bone, and kids will limp around. And so if you play through that, you're actually more at risk of having a stress fracture or really being out of sport for a longer period of time. So recognizing how we can treat some of these injuries that are related to growth versus kind of playing through it and ignoring the pain.
Good. Thank you. And if we want to learn more, I understand people can go to chop.edu. CHOP stands for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I have to say it's one of the finest children's hospitals in the country. It continues to get awards every year. So you can go to chop.edu. That's CHOP, chop.edu/sports. Is that the right place to go?
That is, and I would just put a plug in that the new U.S. World and World Report just came out today and put CHOP Orthopedics as #1 in the country for the second year in a row.
Wonderful. Congratulations. That's great.
I would just make one point on trying to encourage youth athletes to still have fun. There's been a huge push for performance and winning. And I just want to make sure, we want people to be lifelong athletes and not just playing through high school. So trying to make sure you're finding a sport that you love, that you can continue to participate in and not do so much of it that you get burned out and don't want to participate anymore.
Good. Thank you so much for that last piece of wisdom. We've been talking with Naomi J. Brown, MD. She's a pediatric sports medicine specialist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP. And again, where you can go to learn more is chop.edu/sports. Thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Brown.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good. And we will see you all again. Thanks for being here with us. And as we always say at the end of every show, go to health. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in this week to Go to Health Media. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks and another health expert next time. You can also catch the program on your favorite podcast platform. Until our next show, be sure to visit us on the web at gotohealthmedia.com and elevate your life.